you right wing or left wing?
I really like buffalo wings.
Hi, and welcome back to Through the Muck and the Mire. I'm your host, David Hollifield. Repping some Athens beer tonight. Oh, and I got my Georgia Bulldogs gear on. I'm just all about Athens tonight, I guess. Pardon me while I take a sip. Let's jump into the roast of Joe Biden. It's probably actually not going to be like a crazy awesome roast. I'm just basically going to say all of the same things that I said last year before the election, which is why I haven't done this video already, because I feel like I'm just repeating myself when I talk about Joe Biden. He's the same person that he's been for the last 50 years. And I tried to tell somebody all that. And apparently you didn't listen. Most people, I guess, probably expected it to go this way. At least I hope so. But there are people that are somehow surprised that it's gone so terribly. So we're going to start with immigration. And Kamala Harris is running the immigration situation right now, doing a terrible fucking job. I think I just saw something that polls were saying she's got the worst rating of any vice president in like 50 years. Some people might blame that on, racist, sexist people that don't like her because she's black and female. Or it could be the fact that she's a fucking hypocrite and she went to Guatemala or somewhere in Central America and literally said, do not come to the United States. If you think you want to come to the border, don't come. I think were her exact words. Don't come, or do not come. Very similar to what Donald Trump said just a couple years ago, I believe. He said, our system's full, turn around. Kamala Harris says, if you're thinking about coming, do not come. Just like the DHS guy now is telling Cubans that are literally trying to flee a communist regime, also, do not come by water. We're not going to take you. It's crazy. Anyways, here's Kamala Harris flip-flopping. This says, months before the election, then Senator Kamala Harris signed onto a letter. By the way, I have the letter, or piece of the letter at least, with fellow Democrats accusing the Trump administration of violating federal law when it took the drastic step of citing the pandemic to close down the Mexican border. Okay, so first off, can you make up your mind? Like, the Democratic Party and the media have, it's been a year and a half now or however long. They said citing the pandemic was dramatic. Citing the pandemic to close the border or to restrict immigration or something was dramatic to them. Just like they said, preventing travel from China when China literally had the fucking outbreak in China before we knew that it had already reached America or whatever. That was xenophobic. Like, what are you talking about? Anyways, so he used Title 42. And Kamala Harris literally signed on to this letter right here. This is the opening paragraph of the letter, the memo. And it is saying, let's see. So it's talking about introduction of certain persons from countries where a communicable disease exists. That's what Title 42 prohibits. And they're saying that it's supposed to grant limited authority to temporarily suspend the entry of certain categories of persons to the United States when doing so is required in the interest of public health. So what they're saying is that the Donald Trump administration grossly misinterpreted that, and they shouldn't have been allowed to do that with the pandemic as their reasoning. And this was in March of 2020 when this happened. So early pandemic, basically right when everything was locking down, actually. That's when schools were shutting down, businesses were closing 2020 and stuff like that. And Kamala Harris then is saying that this is a dramatic reasoning and that it's a massive violation of federal law and all this crap. Well, it is now August of 2021. So what is that, a year and a half later? And 7 months into the new presidency? And Title 42 is still being used to restrict travel from Mexico. I know, it's shocking. It's crazy, right? Can't believe it, huh? Me either. You can tell, right? I can't contain myself. I'm so shocked at this. It's insane. I don't understand. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the next thing. The legacy of Joe Biden. This is mostly criminal justice stuff, you know. So this is a slide that I used in a class from law school where I actually got to roast Joe Biden in law school. It was pretty fun, especially considering that he's an attorney himself. But so this might not be a completely comprehensive list, but this is a possibly comprehensive list of basically all of the criminal justice legislation that he personally wrote or co-sponsored. And this is pretty much all of the worst criminal justice policy of the last 40 years, pretty much. Yeah, 40 years. This includes the crack versus powder cocaine disparity in sentencing, which when it originally was implemented was 100-1 sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine. You know, you might already know this, but you could look it up. But there's one race that's more likely to use crack and one race that's more likely to use powder. And crack just happened to be pushed into certain neighborhoods of one race back in the day. But somehow this guy who made that sentencing disparity and who funded the war on drugs and who created mandatory minimum sentences, what else? He's done all kinds of crazy shit. Anyways, that's the guy that y'all picked during the, I think it's been said that BLM and basically everything that's happened since George Floyd's murder is the largest civil rights movement in history. And in the midst of that, you elected, some of you at least, not all of you, but you know who you are, I'm pointing at you. You elected the man that's literally personally responsible for the most atrocious criminal justice policy in history. And once again, it's August fucking 4th, 2021, and what has he done to reverse it? The only thing, let me pull that back up. Let's look at two things that have happened in the last 11 years that Joe Biden has done somewhat positive for criminal justice. In 2010, you see that, the Fair Sentencing Act. Fair sentence. I'm doing quotations for those of you listening in audio only. These are air quotes. Fair Sentencing Act. So we dropped that crack and powder cocaine sentencing disparity from 100-1 sentencing down to 18-1, an 18-1 ratio of sentencing. So if I got 1 year for powder, somebody else is going to get 18 years for crack. The same amount. It's the same drug, by the way. It's literally the same drug. It's not one of them's not really more dangerous than the other, more addictive. That's just bullshit that they said to push this legislation and be racist pieces of shit. But anyways, apparently it's not 100-1 anymore. It's 18-1, and that's apparently fair. And then so 2021 at the end of that timeline was, since Joe Biden has taken over as a president, he did say that the federal government is no longer going to contract with private prisons anymore. States can still contract with private prisons, but the federal government's not going to anymore. There's pros and cons to this. A lot of people have argued about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, really, or whether it's neither. I think it's kind of neither. I don't like the idea of monetarily incentivizing the incarceration of American citizens. I think that sounds like a terrible, terrible fucking thing. Terrible recipe. And it's proven to be, pretty bad. There's been at least one anecdotal example of a judge that is like basically just like sending prisoners to like a specific prison because he was getting paid off for it or whatever. But the fact that the federal government is not going to contract with private prisons anymore doesn't actually do anything to the incarceration rate or the incarcerated population. All that means is that they just won't be incarcerated in a private prison anymore. They're just going to be incarcerated in a publicly funded federal prison. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's like somewhat of a like decent thing, but at the same time, like there's still a crazy amount of like the entire war on drugs, which Joe Biden amped up like crazy, and multiple, if you go back and look at that timeline and look up all of those different things, a lot of that stuff was basically just the war on drugs, and he's funding it, and he's just creating new policies. He created grant programs, I think in the 94 crime bill, that basically if a local police department could prove that they had more drug arrests, then they would get these grant fundings and get to buy all this shit off of federal grant money. So what do you think that these like local police did? They just focused on arresting people for drugs because they're like, shit, if we just start making it look like we got a bad drug problem, we're just going to get a bunch more federal money for it. So that's like when this diversion to like focusing on criminalizing what people put in their own body like really took off. So we're just like bolstering up the war on drugs here under Joe Biden. He hasn't done anything to change it. Black Lives Matter called him out like a few months ago, I guess. It might have even been like the first couple months that he was in office. Black Lives Matter called him out and was like, you know, and I don't like Black Lives Matter. They suck. The organization. Let me be clear. I do believe that Black Lives Matter. I believe that the Black Lives Matter organization sucks. But they did say Joe Biden is still funding, or like even maybe I think they said funding even more, basically like militarization and, you know, sending more police into neighborhoods and stuff like that. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Again, I feel like I'm just repeating myself here. Nothing is changing. You shouldn't expect much to change. Let's see, the wars. Let's talk about war for a second. So there's one thing I have to credit Joe Biden on, and it's going to be a follow-up. So we're going to circle back. Okay, see what I did there? We're going to circle back to this in a few months, maybe next year, and see how they handled it. But I do have to give them credit for it appears that they're actually pulling out of Afghanistan, which I am a fan of. He said that he was going to do it as the vice president. I think in either 2012 or 2014, he said, we're going to get out of Afghanistan, and they didn't do it. Donald Trump campaign talking about pulling out of Afghanistan. He said it multiple times. All of the fucking Trump, knobbers are like, oh, Trump's anti-war. He's a libertarian. He's the most libertarian president. He's anti-war. He increased Afghan troops by 50% within, I think, his first year or two in office. You can fact check me on that if you'd like to. He ultimately said that he was going to pull us out of Afghanistan, never did it. And then he threatened to do it at the very end of his presidency because he's a bitch. And he wanted to try to put that in Joe Biden's lap and be like, hey, I'm going to pull out of Afghanistan in January. We're going to pull out of... This is terrible. We're going to pull out of Afghanistan the very last month I'm in office so that you have to pick up the pieces, basically. But now we're going to see what Joe Biden's administration is going to do with that, because it's already looking like a train wreck. Personally, I don't understand why you would announce a date. There's a thing within the military called OPSEC, Operational Security, and you basically don't want to put out too much information about what you're planning to do because the bad guys use that information against you. So essentially what we did here was, I'm pretty sure they said, hey, we're going to pull out of Afghanistan by September of this year. So, something like that, August, September, whatever. That was just like a message to the Taliban and whoever. I think ISIS has cells in Afghanistan still, and all these other just people that are looking for power. There's going to be a power vacuum similar to Iraq. It's a little bit different, but basically what you said was, hey guys, we're going to get out of here in a couple months, just hang back for a little while, collect your troops, get your resources and your money together. Come September, we won't even be here, so you can just come in and fuck all this shit up. We're just going to leave, all right? And apparently that's what they're doing. They're just like, I think it was either Kabul or Kandahar, literally just shut off the electricity at the base and dipped out in the middle of the night. And the next day, it got fucking ransacked by the locals. It's insane, and it's sad. It's really unfortunate for I've got mixed feelings about it. I know a lot of military, a lot of people that have deployed, especially to Afghanistan, obviously, have mixed feelings about it because, we lost brothers and sisters over there. We spent, our blood, sweat, and tears over there. And now we're seeing cities and villages and stuff that we fought for get overrun by Taliban. But I mean, we've been there for fucking 20 years. We've been training up the Afghan army and the Afghan national police. Like at some point, they have to fucking pick themselves up by the bootstraps, like we like to say, and fight for their own country. And they haven't done it. 20 years. You couldn't do it with our help and with all these other international armies in there helping you. You got to fight for yourself at some point. So I don't know. I also don't like America being the world police. There's not really any reason for us to be there anymore. So I'm glad we're pulling out. I just hope that we take care of our interpreters. And that's really the biggest thing. Whatever, if hopefully they get their shit together and the Taliban doesn't just control everything. But the thing that I'm most concerned about, that I want to circle back on in a year, is seeing what we've done with our interpreters, because those people literally put their not only their own life but their family's life on the line working with us. And I mean, we saw it in person. I don't know if I've said this on here. I've probably talked about military stuff before, but I deployed to Afghanistan in 2013. I worked directly with some of the interpreters and with Afghan nationals they worked for a security contracting company with us, and they got death threats. There were people that had their family killed or kidnapped and shit while I was there. It's bad. There's a compound, a construction compound that was right behind where we were working out on our fob, and it got hit really bad. It was IDF indirect fire, so they're shooting rockets at it and stuff. But it was targeted. That construction compound was specifically targeted because it was a bunch of family members of people that were helping the United States. So some of our interpreters, they get pulled over basically on their walk home or their ride home to the villages outside of our fob, and the Taliban literally just be like, listen, you're either going to provide us intel or do this job for us or whatever, or we're going to murder your family tomorrow. So that's the condition that they're stuck living in now. We're about to abandon a lot of those people. And there's been a lot of people fighting to get approval of. There's a special type. I should have looked it up. There's some a special type of authorization to get them approved to come in the United States. But we're gonna have to see what this administration does with that. Oh yeah, here's a little clip of Dan Crenshaw. Oh, hold up. Let me first off we talked about some hypocrites earlier. Talked about they say one thing. Kamala Harris, prime example, Title 42 at the border, and then she does another thing when she gets in office, right? And then you've got.
Let's take a quick photo so we can keep the pressure up so other colleagues can come out here. Yeah? Great.
Is this your New York crew?
No, this is everybody, all right?
Oh, Corey had to run to should go to a hit. She's okay.
AOC being a hypocrite as well. All the Democrats are doing the shit. Here's Dan Crenshaw to talk about it because he'll say it better than I do.
And not for me. This has consistently been the case with the left. I mean, you saw it with the mayor of D.C. just recently, right after imposing mandates, they went and broke them. This was the case with Governor Newsom. Now this is the case with President Obama. And I think that's what really frustrates Americans.
Yeah, so rules for thee, but not for me. I like that. I've never heard it said that way before. Dan Crenshaw, personally, I think the guy can be a chode. He's pretty cringy for different reasons. Maybe I'll make a video about him one day. I like some of the things he does and says, but in general, I think he's kind of a chode. But he was right there, you know. Broken clocks right twice a day. You've got, Joe Biden talking about 700 person birthday party. You just had the mayor sitting at the table at this big indoor party, no mask on. AOC is doing photo ops where she literally is sitting in a massive crowd of people and all of a sudden is like, all right, well, we're going to take a picture. Let me put on my mask real quick and fucking bullshit you guys and act like I'm going to put this mask on or act like I wear this mask around people. They don't do it. But, you know, my wife, who's a school teacher, has to go to school and wear the mask for 8 hours a day. Me, in the military, when I'm doing National Guard stuff, the DOD put out a memorandum saying that anytime I'm in a DOD installation, I have to wear a mask the entire time that I'm in that building. But you've got these politicians, the ones that are pushing these types of policies and stuff like that, having parties, having photo ops and all this crap. I'll put on the mask when the camera's out. Awesome. You're doing great things for your country. You know, and I'm not even like, so it sucks that we have to wear masks. I'm not necessarily making an argument for or against having to wear the mask. I don't think that it should be government mandated. I think like if a private store wants to say you need to wear a mask, then whatever, that's their business. They get to do that. I don't think the federal government should be telling us whether we should wear a mask or not. I also personally don't think you need to wear a mask unless you're actually symptomatic, but I'm not a doctor. This is just my humble opinion. But it's not the point. Like, that's not the point of what I'm saying. The point isn't whether or not we should or should not have to wear masks. The point is that the Democratic Party, since early last year, has been picking and choosing when coronavirus is serious and when it's not. You know, when Donald Trump wants to use coronavirus as justification for Title 42, shutting down the border or shutting down a part of immigration, you know, they literally called him dramatic. But then they want to put in mask mandates, but then they don't want to wear the actual mask when they're around people. So it's just bullshit. I guess I haven't really said, this whole entire thing hasn't really just been about Joe Biden. So, yeah, I don't know. Nothing surprising. The guy can't read a teleprompter. I think he's got dementia. I'm not trying to be insensitive. Like, I know I have friends that have, like, they don't have dementia. Their parents have dementia. And it's a very sensitive topic for people that have lost a loved one to, you know, that battle. I'm not trying to poke fun at people that have dementia. I'm trying to poke fun at the fact that the sitting president of the United States cannot read a fucking teleprompter. I don't know if he doesn't have diagnosed dementia, so I'm not even saying he has dementia. The fact that he cannot read a teleprompter probably means he shouldn't be the president. You know, if all of these other things, if all of his terrible legacy of policy isn't enough for you, maybe the fact that he can't read should be enough to be like, yeah, maybe he shouldn't be in office. But that being said, I actually would rather have him than Kamala Harris because she doesn't give a shit about the Constitution. I know people will be like, oh, Joe Biden doesn't like the Constitution either. There's a clip, I should have included it, but at the vice presidential, what do you call it? Or no, it was the presidential debates. The host asked specifically, he said something along the lines of, Vice President Biden has said that the president does not have the constitutional authority to ban automatic weapons or whatever, assault rifles, whatever that term is that they would like to use. And they said, Kamala Harris, what is your answer to that? And she said, Joe, instead of saying that we can, why don't you just say, or hold on, what did she say? Instead of saying, no, we can't, why don't you just say, yes, we can? And then like the whole, audience just roared with clapping and stuff like that. So just cheering on the fact that she's talking about straight up violating the Constitution of the United States. And Joe Biden, I have to give him credit on this one, literally just said what the host originally said in the question and said, we can't do that. Like you can't do that. So that's rhetoric. That's one thing. Let's see if he actually tries to do that, though. That is actually another thing we talk about. Guns. So they're kind of going down the same path that the Trump administration did with guns. Just trying to. I mean, it's the same thing. It's all government. It's like this is what the police do that I don't like. They're like, let's just look for ambiguous law and see if we can misinterpret it. Or just change it straight up, like what Donald Trump did with bump stocks. Was they just changed the definition of a machine gun to include a gun that has a bump stock on it, even though a machine gun technically is a gun that shoots more than one projectile per trigger squeeze. They were like, oh, we're just going to call a bump stock that, even though that's not it. And since then, one of the federal courts has overturned that and said that it was unconstitutional. Let's see what Joe Biden does. I'll circle back around on that one. I'm pretty sure the ATF is working on some stuff with those 80% build kits and pistol braces still. I'm not sure. I'll have to check on that. Anyways, if you haven't followed me on Instagram, follow me. Just is my podcast name, Through the Muck and the Mire. I post politics and a lot of jiu-jitsu content. Actually, I started doing jiu-jitsu like 4 months ago, and actually my next couple of videos might be like jiu-jitsu centered kind of content about I did my first tournament 2 weeks ago and I won double gold, so I might talk about how that experience was, show some videos from that. And then also I'm going to possibly be doing 2 videos, this is why I brought up Instagram. I did some polling on Instagram through my story, asking people to say, what kind of episodes you want me to do in the future. You can put it in the comments too. Also, like if you don't have Instagram or you don't feel like going to do that or contacting me, you can just talk in the comments about what you would like to hear from me. Anyways, the next 2 videos hopefully will be about veterans and about police separately and benefits that we get from training jiu-jitsu. The police one I'm actually really interested to do. I'm going to get a group of guys from the gym. We've got a bunch of veterans and police officers that train jiu-jitsu at my gym, so that's convenient. But yeah, I'm going to talk to them. I think it's really good, honestly. If you're a police officer or you're related to a police officer or you're even friends with a police officer, tell them about a program called Adoptacop BJJ. They are sponsoring police officers, like paying for their memberships to go train jiu-jitsu. So if that's something that they might be interested in, let them know about it. We're going to talk about it whenever I do that episode. I apologize for the hiatus. I promise that I will maybe be more active in the near future. I promise that I might possibly be more active in the near future. So anyways, thank you for joining me again. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave some comments, like, subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks. Bye.